Right, welcome back and back to our discussion, and let me welcome again our guest, Dr. Zeinab Nawar, Professor of Economics. Again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we start with what we've just heard in this report, and indeed the government and the leadership were very much into the industrial sector for the past few years. And there has been great efforts exerted in this concern. How do you assess the outcome of those efforts so far?
Of course, when we talk about IBDA, one of the initiatives that I'm taking the lead of developing more efforts into the industrialization of Egypt. This is the thing that's very important to think about. I mean, lately we have to think of different ways and out-of-the-box ways to develop Egypt. Industry and industrialization, if we talk about industrialization, we know that we used to teach to our students, we have the first industrial revolution, we have the second industrial revolution. Any country seeks development, any country seeks true growth and true development, should start with industrialization. Should start with the industry itself. The industry, this is a broad word, very large word. It includes all and different resources that you can transform into final products, final goods that you can share and export to the different countries of the world, and also you can sell inside the country and you create a value added. So industry, this is the first thing that we have to focus on for the coming periods and for the coming future. Why? Again, the war between Russia and Ukraine and all of this worldwide struggle that we are witnessing now, we are quite sure that some of the industries in these struggling nations, I'm talking about Russia and the US and also China, some of their work will be affected, and some of the work of the small and medium enterprises also will be affected. So I think it's the time for us as Egyptians now, to go to these markets and to start new initiatives, and also to look for new windows for exportation and for work. Industry, this is number one to achieve development, number one to create jobs, number one to bring technology, number one to work on technological infrastructure. So industry should be our first priority from now and even for the coming years. If you talk about 10, 20, 50, maybe 100 years, it's industry, and the future will be in the industrialization and the true industrialization, and also the use of the resources as much as possible, to think what exactly the competitive advantage of Egypt, what are the strengths of our resources, where we can compete, and how we can use even the resources that we do have with the most efficient ways. This is very important.
This is why the leadership has been putting that in the forefront.
Yes, definitely, yes.
The file of industry here, but also we're speaking about the leadership directives in order to localize industry. Localize and the specialization have been the keywords of development for now, and this was very much illustrated by the president and hence the government. How do you view the importance of such direction?
The leadership for industrialization, this is a core part. I mean, if the private sector, if the owners of the business, they feel that the government and the leadership of the country is behind their back, just pushing them, I mean that just giving them the messages that you can start your own work, we will give you more facilities, this of course will encourage them to work. For industry and for the private sector, and given the kind of situations and events we have worldwide, there is a great risk for the industry and for the private sector to work. The risk is coming from out there, it's not from Egypt. So if the government and the leadership successfully gave these messages to the businessmen and to the private sector and for the those who are working in the industry, that you can work and you can and there is no worry, we can facilitate your work and we can give you more incentives, I think this would be very
I guess
important.
this is the direction, right?
Yes,
I mean, here
yes.
that the government is working on giving the, or motivating and definitely attracting more and more foreign direct investments through some of the facilities that has been given. One of them is localizing the industry in terms of, we know that lots of raw materials and technological spare parts, plus some of the needed materials and raw materials in the process of industry, we used to import them. Now there is this direction towards localizing the industry in terms of trying as much as possible to provide our industrial sector with those needs, but made in Egypt.
Yes, yes.
So how do you view, how does this facilitate, or how do you view this in facilitating issues for or the industry process and or facilitate the climate for investors?
First, you had the question that the government and the president already, there are initiatives that relevant to the industry. So why we are just more stressing on that right now? Because in the time of crisis, this is very normal that you should give continuous messages to the private sector and to those who are working in the manufacturing field, and even for us as consumers and even for us as professors, that the government is still continuously doing their work and doing their effort to support the private sector. So this is very important that we are just saying the messages, and we should repeat the messages. This is very important. This is number one. Number two, localization and looking for the internal resources. I'll tell you why there is more stresses now. I think for the localization of the economic activities, we started to look for the importance of depending on ourselves since Corona. What happened that the war between Russia and Ukraine, it brought more challenges into the country. So this is why we are now moving faster in just pushing the policies and everything towards the localization. If you remember that maybe from 5 years ago, we used to talk a lot about the foreign direct investment and all of this foreign investors that can come to Egypt. This was very normal at that time. Why? Because we used to tell our students, and we used to tell in our economic theories, that dependency between the countries, dependency between the government leaders around the world. I mean, dependency in terms that it's normal, and you go with the globalization and increasing the amount of trade between countries, and we should be open to the world and all of this. But Corona and also the war between Russia and Ukraine, it had brought another theories, different theories now.
Yes,
that saying that get rid of all of the old theories that we used to tell you, and we have now to work on our own resources, because the international world is not guaranteed for the time being. I'm sorry to tell you so. So yes, before we used to say that we have to trade with other countries, and if we find that there is a chance to import a product, and then of course we have to export to other countries. But now all the countries, all the government, they are thinking of how to satisfy the basic needs, substance level inside the country. How can I do this without the localization of the economic activities and the localization of the industry? I need now to create more resources. How can I do that without a huge amount of exportation? So now it's a new theories, new ideas. It's not new. It's not totally new. It was one of the mainstreams, of course, of the economic thought. But however, the stress is on that for the time being, because those who used to to export to the rest of the world, like China, like Russia, they are collapsing now. So for Egypt, we had to, yes, they are collapsing to some extent. Economic.
China is collapsing.
Yes, there are
and Russia is collapsing.
Yes, I will tell you collapsing in terms of what?
In terms of what?
I'll tell you something. The collapse started between the war between China and the US. There was a great expectation that the GDP of China would be number one.
we don't,
and US will be number 2.
yes, but we don't have war, right? We are just in a struggle, economic struggle,
No,
or
no.
a cold one between economies.
Yes, yes, but they are not in their full strength as before. China was expected to be number 1 in terms of economic growth and number 1 exporting to the rest of the world. Now China is not number 1 because the policy of the US has succeeded to bring China again to be number 2. I'm talking about worldwide. There was a great expectations for China and also great expectations for India, but now things became different. No, what they're supposed to be in, they are not in now.
Dr. Zeinab,
Yes.
with all respect, but we are awaiting for a very important summit that will take place in Saudi Arabia. It's a Chinese-Arab summit.
Yes,
and
yes.
It's very strong.
Yes,
and
yes.
of course,
Yes,
the
no, no, no,
G20,
but-
which will be held in India. And we
Yes.
were just
no,
invited
but-
in.
Yes, yes. Look, I don't agree with you on this. But what I'm telling to you, what I'm telling to you, they are not the same as before. These forces
all economies
are
were
not,
hard hit by the
no,
war.
no, no. But these strength economies, they will not continue. This struggle will bring them down, and this is why we will have a chance in the future for us as Egypt, and even if you talk about the Arab nations, is to go and to take the leadership if we'd like to work on that.
Right. Right. We're speaking here. Let's come to the core of what
Okay,
we
I'm
were
with you.
speaking about, and definitely localizing industries has also many importance, or the country has been giving it other importance so as to reduce the gap between the exports and the imports, which
Yes.
has its own also repercussions on the foreign currency. Foreign currency has been an important issue, particularly with regard to the developments or the world developments. How do you view that?
If you think about localization of any of the economic activities, this means that we are bringing what we used to give to the international world in terms of imports, and that we will do it inside the country. You can imagine the huge amount of importation that we used to do to the rest of the world, with the rest of the world. But now we want to export to the rest of the world. So localization means whatever we used to import from out there, we can do it inside the country with our resources and with our labor force, and even we can get the technology from the international community. So once you do the localization, once you will do some sort of partnership with the international world, bringing the technology from the international world into the country and building on that, this is very important. You are creating a technological edge inside the country. What makes the US and what makes Russia and what makes China number 1 in manufacturing is the technology. So what is the difference between Egypt and between China and between the US? The level of technology and the level of education. Can we do it inside Egypt? We can do it. If we had worked on a continuous efforts in the education, in the technical education, in bringing the technology into our country through the successful cooperation with the multinational companies, we can easily achieve that. We can easily achieve that. So localization means what? I'm just trying to use the factors of production, the labor force, which are great labor force, mindset. We have an excellent mindset. We have an excellent specializations, and also we have a lot of resources that we still need to use.
Indeed.
So this is why it's our opportunity as a country to work on a successful localization of resources, to try to attract whatever we can get from this huge, strong, what we can say, civilizations that are starting their collapsing. The collapsing of any civilization through 150 years. If you talk about the US civilization, if you talk about the Chinese civilizations, even if you talk about the Russian civilization that had started maybe 200 years ago. So they are now struggling. They are now struggling. I'm talking about the Industrial Revolution and all of this, okay? The modern industrialization. So the first and the second industrialization. So these huge, strong countries, they will collapse, and they will start their collapse. And it's our chance, if we had worked dedicatedly, to get out or to get some of the resources.
We're not speaking, of
Yes,
course,
I
about
know
the
that you
collapse
don't
of
agree with
any.
this.
Of course, I don't.
No,
but
no,
this is not me
no,
to
no,
say
of course.
whether
No,
I.
no, I believe in this. I believe that one day we can get out from them
Of course.
good resources, and we can one day be better than this,
What
than
we
all
are-
of these nations by a good effort and a dedicated effort.
Definitely, definitely. We are hoping for our country to go forward ever. But it's not about the collapse of some other economies. It's just opportunities that can take us to a win-win situation in which we can really work together.
This is part of the scene, but the other part of the scene is the interest. For the international community, number one is our interest. If you have an interest somewhere and you can get it, you will get it, because this will be for the sake of your community.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Our interest comes first, definitely. So before we move on with our discussion, let me here take this second report. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said that the government is paying more attention to Egypt's industry by launching the START initiative to support and localize national industries to rely on local products. The president also directed the government to grant a golden license to all investors applicants for 3 months to facilitate procedures for establishing priority projects for the state. Let's watch.